Abhay would regularly visit Vrindavan's important temples, and afterwards he would shop, returning to his room around 11 with vegetables for cooking. Using the kerosene burner and a three-tiered cooker, he would cook rice, potatoes, and sometimes sabzi. He would also cook chapatis. He would take only one meal a day at noon, and in the evening, a cup of milk. When he did not have time to cook, he would take the prasadam of the deity. After lunch, he would nap for 15 minutes and then write. He rarely received visitors, but stayed alone writing. Somebody else would like to read?
Yes, Prabhu, I can read.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Just before sunset, he would again go out visiting temples. At Kesi Ghat, he would pass by sadhus sitting alone here and there. Facing the Yamuna, the river itself was little trafficked. Sometimes a boat or two slowly moving on the river's placidity. Sometimes a fish splashed in the water or a bird winged along the river, watchful. Kesi Ghat was quiet and beautiful, especially after the sun had relented for the day. Sadhus would hail Abhay on sight with Vrindavan's common greeting, Jai Radhe, and Abhay would return his Hare Krishna. When the evening he walked through town, he would find himself amidst the vibrations of one kirtan after another. In the temple of Krishna, Rama, Chaitanya, Nrsimha, or Shiva, in ashrama halls, in homes, even amongst groups walking on the streets, there would be kirtan. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. He would often see Bengali widows gathered together in a hall. Thousands of them lived in ashramas in Vrindavan, staying together with few ones, wearing dull white saris, keeping their hair cut short, never leaving Vrindavan even for Mathura, wanting only to stay in Vrindavan. To die in Vrindavan chanting Hare Krishna. A man would sit playing mridanga and leading a chant while a group of widows clapped their hands unevenly, responding in their childlike voices. The drum, the clapping, the singers, unpolished but earnest, made a sweet sound in the evening. As Abhay walked, no sooner would the sound of one kirtan fade than another would rise loudly before him, and then fade behind him as another rose to meet him. A temple bell ringing formidably, interminglingly with the drums, cymbals, and chorus of another group or a single person passing nearby, singing his own Radhe Radhe. Hare Krishna.
Okay, somebody else would like to read?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Sorry.
Wait. Even the greetings.
No, sorry, Prabhu. I just went a bit, scrolled a bit too much.
Yes, I got the book.
Oh, okay.
Even the greetings were Kirtan, Jai Radhe, Haribol. As faces passed, as carts clattered by, as men joked or made their last transaction of the day in the market, and as stray cows made their way home, their bells clanging around their necks. Somehow, everything was in connection with Krishna. And as Abhay returned to the secluded Panchi Gopalji temple, there also he would hear Kirtan, only more private, perhaps only a husband and a wife in their room. A man playing mridanga and singing one line of bhajan, his wife singing in response. Vrindavan was not ordinary. Every singer sounded sweet in his own way, an expert melodist, and everyone sang of Hare Krishna. Krishna was present in every occasion and event. Srila Prabhupada, the glories of Krishna nobody can understand. Similarly, Vrindavan, the land of which is known as Vrindavan, is also unlimited potency. When you go to Vrindavan, you will find unlimited potency of spiritual atmosphere. Still, If you go to Vrindavan, you will see so many saints and sages. Still, they are worshipping Vrindavan Dham. As Lord Krishna is worshipable, similarly his place, Vrindavan, is as good as Krishna. It is also worshipable. Should I stop?
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita ki jai.
Hare.
It's a wonderful description of Vrindavan at that time, given by his Swarup Maharaj.
Prabhuji, can you please increase your volume a bit?
Volume? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
make it
a bit less.
Is it any better?
Yes, much better now.
Better? Okay.
Yes.
Far off. I'll just change the screen and Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Ira Ira Madhava Yabihari Madhava Yabihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radha Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Vasudeva Jaya Jaya Gaurnitai 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Ramachari Shilaridas Thakur ki jai, Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Sri Sri Radha Giridhari Bhagavan ki jai, Sri Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maiya ki jai, Sri Sri Gaur Nitai ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So welcome everybody to this morning Bhagavatam class. It's a very, very auspicious month, as we are all aware. It's the Purushottam month. And the discussion, reading, hearing of Bhagavatam is especially potent and powerful during this particular month.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, can you increase your volume a bit more because still it is low.
Okay, let's see. Okay.
Or probably slightly move closer to the mic. Probably that
Yeah,
might.
that's what I'm trying to do. What I'll do is I'll just move it this way. Yeah. Is that better now, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, we will read from 4:22-26, chapter title Prithu Maharaj's meeting with the Kumaras. Yada Brahmani Naishtiki Puman Acharyavan Jnana Viragaram Hasa Dahatya Viryam Hridayam Jivakosham Panchatmakam Yonimivotthitognihi Yada Brahmani Naishtiki Puman Acharyavan Jnana Viragaram Hasa Dahatya Viryam Hridayam Jivakosham Panchatmakam Yonimivotthitognihi Yada Brahmani Naishtiki Puman Acharyavan Jnana Viragaram Hasa Dahatya Viryam Hridayam Jivakosham Panchatmakam Yonimivotthitognihi. Okay, can I request devotees to please recite?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Yadarati Brahmani Nishtaki Puman Acharyavan Jnana Viragaramoksha Dadati Avyam Hridayam Jivakosham Panchatmakam Yonim Nivahito Agni. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, I am also trying. Yadharatir Brahmani Naishtiki Puman Acharyabhyan Jnana Viragaram Hasa Dahatya Viryam Hridayam Jivakosham Panchatmakam Yoni Vibhuttitognihi.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Yadaratir Brahmani Noishtike Puman Acharyavan Jnana Viragaram Hasa Dahati Abhiryam Hridayam Jivakosham Panchatmakam Yonimivotthitognihi. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I am also trying. Jadarutir Brahmani Noishtaki Puman Acharyavan Jnana Viragaram Hasa Dahat Virjam Hridayam Jivakosham Panchatmakam Jonim Ivothito Agnihi. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so we'll look at the word for word translation. Yada, when. Ratihi, attachment. Brahmani, in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Naishtiki, fixed. Puman, the person. Acharya, completely surrendered to the spiritual master. Jnana, knowledge. Viraga, detachment. Ram hasa, by the force of. Dahati, burns. Aviryam, impotent. Hridayam, within the heart. Jiva kosham, the covering of the spirit soul. Pancha atmakam, 5 elements. Yonim, source of birth. Iva, like. Utthitaha, emanating. Agnihi, fire. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Upon becoming fixed in his attachment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the grace of the spiritual master and by awakening knowledge and detachment, the living entity situated within the heart of the body and covered by the five elements burns up his material surroundings exactly as fire arising from wood burns the wood itself. Purport. It is said that both the Jivatma, the individual soul, and the Paramatma live together within the heart. In the Vedic version, it is stated, Riddhi Hyayam Atma. The soul and super soul both live within the heart. The individual soul is liberated when it comes out of the material heart or cleanses the heart to make it spiritualized. The example given here is very appropriate. Yonim ivothito agnihi. Agni or fire comes out of wood, and by it, the wood is completely destroyed. Similarly, when a living entity increases his attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is to be considered like fire. A blazing fire is visible by its exhibition of heat and light. Similarly, when the living entity within the heart becomes enlightened with full spiritual knowledge and detachment, and detached from the material world, he burns up his material covering of the five elements: earth, water, fire, air, and sky, and becomes free from the five kinds of material attachments, namely ignorance, false egoism, attachment to the material world, envy, and absorption in material consciousness. Therefore, Panchatmakam, as mentioned in this verse, refers to either the five elements or the five coverings of material contamination. When these are all burned into ashes by the blazing fire of knowledge and detachment, one is fixed firmly in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless one takes shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and advances one's attraction for Krishna by the spiritual master's instructions, the five coverings of the living entity cannot be removed from the material heart. The living entity is centered within the heart, and to take him away from the heart is to liberate him. This is the process. One must take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and by his instruction increase one's knowledge in devotional service, become detached from the material world, and thus become liberated. An advanced devotee, therefore, does not live within the material body but within his spiritual body. Just as a dry coconut lives detached from the coconut husk, even though within the husk. The pure devotee's body is therefore called Chinmay Sharir, spiritualized body. In other words, a devotee's body is not connected with material activities, and as such, a devotee is always liberated. Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Srila Rupa Goswami also confirms this. Iha yasya hare erdasye karmana manasagira nikhilashvapyavasthasu jivan muktaha sa uchyate. Whatever his condition may be, one who is engaged fully with his body, mind, and speech in the service of the Lord is liberated even within this body. From Bhakti Rasamrita. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this chapter 22, Prithu Maharaj meets with the Kumaras, 63 verses in the chapter, and it's interesting. Of course, in the previous classes, and we saw how the story goes of how Vishnu comes to meet Prithu Maharaj on account of the deeds that he had done in following the instructions of the previous acharyas and his elders. And Vishnu, he leaves that place after giving instructions and interacting with Prithu Maharaj. And it is said further on that Lord Vishnu had predicted that the Kumaras will come later on and instruct Prithu Maharaj. And so in this particular chapter, we saw how when these four personalities arrived, the four Kumaras, how wonderfully Prithu Maharaj considered himself very fortunate, because he said that it is not that such saintly persons go to everybody's place all the time. So when a saintly person comes to somebody's house, it is to be considered extremely fortunate for that person who has the opportunity to receive such a guest. And then he received the four Kumaras, and then the four Kumaras started speaking. So in this chapter, we saw from text 18 to about 40, Sanat Kumar responding to the wonderful hospitality of Prithu Maharaj and expressing his complete satisfaction. And because he was satisfied, he gave instructions for the benefit of Prithu. And then from text 7 onwards, and earlier on, Prithu Maharaj, he expresses his good fortune. And now in this particular section, it is mentioned that how one can make progress spiritually. So we are in this section where in text 24, just recollecting a little bit, text 24, the process for spiritual advancement was mentioned. And yesterday in text 25, the what to do was mentioned. Like it was said that we should constantly chant, we should constantly hear. And there was a very nice, simile given yesterday in the verse. I don't know if anybody of you recollect. It's a wonderful simile which was describing what is the real decoration for a devotee. Anybody recollects yesterday's verse? So the constant hearing that was recommended was, it was said that it is considered a person who has the hunger to hear, the natural attachment to hear. For such a person, it is a decoration. The decoration for the ears. So this is the real decoration that a devotee has. And as Mahaprabhu also said, that following Vaishnava etiquette is the true decoration of a devotee.
Yes.
So it talked about constantly hearing and how one should increase the culture of devotional service by being fixed in transcendence. That was what yesterday. And today in this verse, text 26, we are being told how it happens. Yesterday was what happens or what should happen. And today it is how it will happen. So it's just so wonderfully linked together. So here there are if we look at this verse, there is a nice flow chart, and there are 4 important points that we can get, 4 flow points. So first, it is being mentioned, Yada Ratir Brahmani. Rati as we know, is what? Is the attachment.
That's
And Brahmani, Prabhupada nicely gives in the purport that Brahmani, sometimes if we interact with, Mayavadis, hopefully not, then the Brahmani is usually translated as impersonal Brahman, like how we understand in Bhagavatam, one of the features of the Lord is Brahman. So as soon as the word Brahmani comes, it is equated as impersonal Brahman. But here, Prabhupada very clearly says Brahmani means unto the source of Brahman. Not Brahman, but the source of Brahman, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when there is attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the process of hearing, now that process of hearing is very, very, it is there in everybody, but it is covered. So people are not naturally attracted to hearing, especially about the Supreme Person. People are attracted to hearing naturally. Like we all want to hear, right? We all want to hear, whether it is on the phone, whether it is an audio, whether it is a video, we all want to hear, and we are constantly hearing. So here, in terms of transcendental activities, the part is not that we should hear something that we don't hear. Something that is new to us. So the hearing process is old, but what we have heard so far is all rubbish. Most of them anyway. So what we are being told is we change our hearing. So we hear something that is more beneficial to us, that will be pleasing to the Lord, and it has a profound effect on our soul and also mind, the subtle body. So in this verse, the subtle body aspect is very important, and we'll discuss a little bit more as we go further. So attachment Ratihi Brahmani. Another important word here is Naishtiki. Naishtiki means Nishtha, fixed, absolutely, very, very strong. Nothing can shake. So fixed in what? Fixed in Acharyavan. Acharyavan is completely one who's completely surrendered to the instructions of one's guru or spiritual master. That is very. One must be fixed in their determination to follow the instructions. So one is attraction to the Supreme Lord. Second is being strong in Acharyavan, in following the instructions. Then when one follows the instructions of the Acharya, what happens? By default, 2 things manifest in that devotee who follows the instructions of the Guru. 2 things manifest. And we saw that in the previous, in chapter 2 of Canto 1 in Bhagavatam. And what were the 2 things? One is Gyan. Sorry?
Gyan
and
Vairagya.
Vairagya, yes. Anybody remembers the verse from chapter 2?
Yeah. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti
Yoga Prayojitaha
Yes.
Gyanatyasu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. These are all prospective Bhakti Shastris, Bhakti Vaibhavs rather, sorry. So nice to have this discussion like this. So yeah, so these 2 things by default manifest, Gyan and Vairagya. And this is what is here, Acharyavan Jnana Viraga. Then the other part is, once that happens, so once we get attracted, once we hear the instructions, once we get Gyan and Vairagya, something amazing happens. And what is that? Dahati. Dahati Aviryam. So something burns. And normally when we say burns, means we get a bit worried, right? I mean, burn is not something good. When we hear somebody burning or getting burnt, it's usually not in a good way, unless it's end of life. That also it's not in a good way. Nobody sees that in a good way, except perhaps devotees who know that the body is just gone and the soul is moved on in a better position, provided, of course, they have done some form of devotional service. So here the result is, after all of these points, the result is what? Dahati, burning. Burning of what? Panchatmakam. So the 5 material elements, as a result of all this, gets completely burned. Now, whether we like it or not, this body, which is made up of 5 elements, it will definitely die. In this material nature, it is so designed that this body made up of the 5 elements will manifest and unmanifest. It will die. We know that. But the death of the material body is not in our hands. So this is the gross body. Now, the death of this gross body is easy or difficult? I mean, if the body has to die, it has to die, right? Is it difficult? Like, does it have to go through a very difficult process? I'm not saying whether the person has to suffer before death or not. Hopefully not. But the death just happens. Whether the person wills or not, the death will happen when it has to happen. That is a gross body. What about the subtle body? Does the subtle body die when the gross body dies? Question.
No.
Prabhuji, it depends whether if the person is liberated, then his subtle body, that way you can say, dies.
Okay. Prabhu, just stay on. So you said if the person is liberated, his subtle body dies. So for a liberated person, does the subtle body die first or the gross body dies first? For a liberated person.
Subtle body.
Subtle body dies first. Does the subtle body die naturally or because of the activities of that person, the subtle body dies?
Because of the activities, because of this process.
Thank you. So this is a very, very important point to be understood in this verse. It talks about the annihilation of gross body and subtle body.
Yes.
The annihilation of the subtle body is very difficult because it is on account of that subtle body which is born due to ignorance, due to the propensity to Lord, to become Ishwar. That's when the subtle body manifests, right? And to ensure that enjoyment propensity can be expressed in this material world, the subtle body takes on a gross body. But the gross body has got a lifespan. Does a subtle body have a lifespan?
No.
No. Why? Because we are directly responsible. We, meaning the spirit soul, is directly responsible for the subtle body, for the creation of the subtle body. The gross body, we are not, we are responsible in a way, but not directly responsible. But subtle body, we are directly responsible to create the subtle body. Because we are directly responsible to create the subtle body, we are also directly responsible for annihilating the subtle body. And the gross body is just a medium given by material nature to fulfill the desires in the subtle body. But that has a lifespan. Whether we like it or not, we are given. And whether we like it or not, it is destroyed only to be given another one. So this is a very important concept to understand here. So keeping that aspect in mind, we see here that first it is said that we have to develop the attachment through the process of constant hearing.
Yes.
So if you look at the fact that we develop the hearing, but it has to come, it has to happen, it has to manifest under the instructions of the spiritual master. So we need the mercy, we need the grace of Guru. Of course, whether it is Shiksha Guru or Diksha Guru, we need both. In fact, Path Pradarshak Guru as well. So we need the blessings and mercy and grace of all of these mentors and guides in our spiritual journey to ensure that we are able to progress nicely in the path of bhakti. So Guru grace is the most important part. The mercy of a devotee, sadhu sangha. That's why in the 5 most important limbs of devotional service, Mahaprabhu first emphasizes on what? Sadhu sangha. And sadhu sangha means very good quality, high quality sadhu sangha. Not just to have, I mean, not that in the sangha we don't have fun. It is fun, but it should be focused somehow or the other around the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it should be focused on how all of us, all the sadhus who are meeting together, who are doing sangha together, they are able to inspire and help each other remember and progress towards the bhakti, the path of bhakti, keeping the Supreme Lord in the center. This is very important. And in the process of doing that, obviously, they have fun, they have a good time, they feel inspired, they feel enthused, and they want to do more. So it is not just a gathering to meet, discuss some dry things, and go away and do our own thing. No, it is to come, meet, have fun, but have fun with Krishna. Be inspired so that when we go back, we want to actually do more. We are a better person than we were when we came for that sadhu sangha. That's very important. And that happens by the grace and mercy of the senior devotee, the Guru, the person who guides us. So there is a nice verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita that says, Guru Krishna Roop Hono Shastrer Pramane, Guru Rupe Krishna Kripa Koren Bhaktagane. So this is very, very important. So Krishna, it means that Guru Krishna Roop. So Guru is a manifestation of Krishna in front of our material eyes. That is the Shastra Pramane. This is the verdict. This is the evidence as we see from Shastras. And Guru Rupe Krishna Kripa Koren Bhaktagane. So Krishna's mercy flows through the medium of a Guru, spiritual master. And there is also another nice verse in Anta Leela that talks about how the Guru and disciple, they are so intimately connected in devotional service. And once they have that connection, until the disciple is liberated, the Guru will never leave such a disciple, provided the disciple is sincere and is willing to follow every instructions of the Guru. So it is said that Shei Bhakto Dhanno Jena Chhade Prabhur Charan. Shei Prabhu Dhanno Jena Chhade Nijo Jon. So that devotee is glorious who does not give up the shelter of the Guru. And that Guru is glorious who never ever thinks of leaving this disciple or this servant. Then there is another interesting verse after that. It says that Durdaive Shebok Jodi Jai Onno Sthane Shei Thakur Dhonno Tare Chule Dhori Ane. So those who understand Bengali, they'll relish it. So it is said that Durdaive, if by some misfortune the servant Shebok, if he abandons the Guru and he gets deviated from the path of bhakti, the Guru, he is so glorious that he will not let the servant just go away and deviate. He will catch hold of the disciple by his hair, and he will bring him back to the path of bhakti and push him to the lotus feet of Supreme Lord. That is the role of Guru. So we can imagine how or why we should be so grateful to the presence of a guide and mentor in our spiritual life. So the grace of Guru is very important. Once we have got the grace, once we have accepted a guru and we want to follow the instructions, then what happens? Those two things manifest, as we mentioned, Gyan and Vairagya. These are concomitant. So there's a nice example given in this purport. Prabhupada says, just like fire, the default nature of fire is heat and light. So similarly, the default nature of us following the instructions of Guru and being completely attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is what? Gyan and Vairagya. Just like heat and light is the dharma of fire, similarly, the living entity being connected to the supreme source of fire becomes like fire and acquires the quality of Gyan and Vairagya. Because he has Gyan and Vairagya, he becomes even more fixed, Naishtiki, Brahmani Naishtiki. He becomes very fixed in his attachment to the Supreme Lord. Right? And because he becomes completely attached, what happens? This body that he has got, which is made up of these 5 elements, Panchatmakam, this covering, the fire, because he gets connected to the fire, he becomes fiery. The soul becomes fiery. And because the soul becomes fiery, it naturally manifests the potency or the power to completely annihilate these 5 material elements that are binding him in this material world. And it also annihilates the subtle body, which is made up of these 5 attachments. Prabhupada very nicely he writes in the purport. If you see there, he talks about 5 things. Ignorance, which is the main reason for us being stuck in this material world. Second, the propensity to enjoy separately from Krishna, which is the false ego. Third, we become attached to material things, to material world. That's a third problem. Fourth, envy. That's actually what started this whole process, envious. And the fifth one is complete absorption in the material conditions. Materially connected and absorbed, constantly meditating and contemplating on that. So this is what we do naturally in this material world, which is not the natural condition of the soul, but in this material world, this is the by default condition, these 5. So these 5 material attachments get completely annihilated by the grace of Supreme Spiritual Master, by acquiring Gyan and Vairagya, and by completely being fixed in the devotional service to the Supreme Lord. And we see in Bhagavad Gita, I think it's 14:26, the nice verse that talks about Mam Chayo Vyabhicharena Bhakti Yogena Sevate. So once we engage in bhakti, what happens? The material nature, Krishna says, no longer acts. So when the material nature no longer acts, that means there are no reactions at that point of time. So whatever material elements we were covered with, they automatically get annihilated. And so a person, it doesn't mean that as soon as this process starts, the person has to go back, because it takes a little bit of a time to go through all this annihilation process. But such a person who is completely attached to the Supreme Person, at that point, he is referred to as, Rupa Goswami says, Jivan Mukta. What does that mean? It means it's liberated. Jivan se mukt ho gaye. This Baddha Jivan se. So such a person, although he looks like an ordinary person, does ordinary things, but actually he is like fire. So he has, or he's burnt up his material coverings, his material attachments, they're all burnt. And he is situated, even though he is in this material world, still living, still appearing like ordinary people, he is a Jivan Mukta. So that is a very important aspect. And to explain this, Prabhupada nicely explains, he gives an example in the purport of what? of a dry coconut. So the pulp, the dry coconut is there in the shell. So when the coconut is tender, it is attached, isn't it? So when we usually break a coconut, we have to scrape it off. It takes a lot of effort to scrape off the pulp because it is attached. But when it dries, what happens? It automatically becomes detached. So if you break a dry coconut, the shell comes off straight away, and the pulp can be taken as it is. It is many times used for yagya, dry coconut. So a Jivan Mukta is exactly like that. And he or his body is referred to as Chinmaya Sharir, Prabhupada says in the purport. And this Chinmaya Sharir actually is our constitutional position. This is what we have to aspire and aim for. So this is the process or how it happens. So how by hearing, how by associating, how by increasing our intensity of devotional service in being attached to the Supreme Person, automatically the gross and the subtle body burns off. And our main problem, of course, gross body is a problem in many respects, but the main problem of keeping us bound in this material world is the gross body, because we cannot annihilate it, and we don't know how to annihilate it. But it is said, there is a nice verse in Bhagavatam 3:25, 33. It says, Jarayatya suya kosham nigirnam analo yatha. So it says, Bhakti is the only way. Please listen. Bhakti is the only way by which the subtle body can be dissolved without any separate endeavor. Just like the fire in the stomach can digest everything that we eat. So when you put some food, automatically you don't need to put extra endeavor. You put, of course, as long as the food is right, you put any food, the natural heat in the stomach digests it. So similarly, as soon as we engage in bhakti, that means our subtle body is slowly dying. The more we intensify our bhakti, the faster it starts getting annihilated. So believe it or not, we are all in the process of destroying and burning up our subtle body. It might not sound like a great news to others, but for devotees, it is a place of rejoicing. And especially in the month of Purushottam, when we get an opportunity to hear Bhagavatam, to intensify our devotional service, imagine how rapidly our subtle body is deteriorating and slowly coming to an end. And as soon as subtle body comes to an end completely, guess what's going to happen? Garud will be standing. Jivan Mukta, of course, and eventually Garud will be standing. It's like Guru Maharaj experienced. And that is the wonderful nature of bhakti. That is the wonderful nature of Srimad Bhagavatam discussion and Shravanam. And that is a wonderful nature of Krishna giving us this wonderful month of Purushottam to intensify what we are doing and get 1,000 times more than what we would normally get when we perform bhakti. So I'm pretty sure everybody is enthusiastic to do Purushottam programs, to hear more, to spread the message of Purushottam to more people, like we go and do home programs or have a program and call people at home. It is a wonderful thing. Discussing chapter 15 or any chapter for that matter from Bhagavatam would please the Lord so much. Give us the grace of Guru, make us more fixed in knowledge and detachment, and make our attachment to the Supreme Lord even stronger. So on this Purushottam month, let us take this opportunity and move towards annihilating our subtle body completely, and eventually discovering or getting to our Chinmaya Sharir. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Thank you very much. I would invite any questions or comments or something people can add on, might have missed.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Krishna.
So, such a beautiful subject, and I know it is your one of the most favorite topic. You often discuss this with us, and it's so favorite to you. So you have taken all efforts to express it in your ways to make it understand to us how these things happens. So beautiful examples as Prabhupada has given, how these 5 elements, the simple thing looks like, but they are not actually simple. They are very, very attached to us. That is ignorance, false ego, attachment to material world, envy and absorption in the material consciousness. So all these 5 things, as you mentioned about this subtle body, how it get destroyed with the help of hearing sadhu sangha and instruction, mainly instruction of Guru Maharaj. That explanation is very, very clear to us. But the question is, as you asked the question, whether it is annihilated or not. So both answers, yes or no is correct. Only yes is correct. Just want to know.
So your question is whether the subtle body is annihilated or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you say annihilated, means by following the process of bhakti, or you're talking about where
In
we are at this?
In general.
Oh yes. So as I mentioned that we, because of our desire to lord over, in initial enviousness and the fact that we assumed this false identification as a controller, we were given that desire came up, and we were given this subtle body. So we acquired this subtle body, the material subtle body, that is. And to fulfill those desires, we were given the gross body. So the subtle body was made up of our own desires. And so the process of bhakti slowly annihilates, because what happens in bhakti, we are dovetailing our desire not to fulfill or gratify our senses or the senses of only people around us. We are slowly prioritizing our desires to fulfill the desire of the Supreme Lord, to fulfill the desire of our Guru. So rather than focusing on only our desires, we start focusing more on Guru's desire, Krishna's desire. And as we progress, we give more priority to fulfilling those desires rather than our desires by being more attached. And so it's not a one-day process. It takes time. But the day all our desires are dovetailed and become transcendental, so we have nothing that we desire for ourselves, like the pure devotees of the Lord who have given up their entire life to Krishna. They don't have any personal desires. Such people, they are Jivan Mukta. So when there is no other desire than to serve Krishna, then we don't need to be there in this material world, because this material world is designed only to fulfill our desires for gratification. So as soon as the subtle body goes, that means we don't have to be here, or we cannot be here actually. So it is a process. It definitely will happen based on our various factors of progress. This is happening in different levels and degrees in all of us.
Thank you. Thank you. I was thinking that a bit my way, or I don't know whether it's correct. Because if we take it as a general discussion, both ways it is correct. For us, it is annihilated. But for general people, it is not annihilated. Do I understand that way? Because general people, they don't follow bhakti and all the processes. Naturally, they are black box, as like in the plane. The black box is always recording whatever the activities is going on, and it will carry in the next life. But in case of devotee, the difference is this black box will be nowhere, no more, because it is already annihilated by the process of bhakti here, that is hearing sadhu sangha, and then spiritual masters instruction. So it's slowly give way. So do you understand that way? Is it correct or?
Well, that's why devotees, they go out to others' houses
Yes.
and slowly starts killing the subtle body of the host.
Thank you, Prabhu.
I know it sounds a bit, but that's
Yes.
what we do, right? I mean, we are following the process. We are slowly annihilating our subtle body. And so we are trying to, since we are getting some effect, we are getting some understanding and realization, we try and help others also achieve that or move towards that end, because we know this is the only way you can get out of this entanglement in this material world and put a complete end to the suffering and miseries that we are facing.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandot Pranam. Thank you so much for a wonderful class. Important what you mentioned. So I just thinking. So Prabhupada, many of the places he says, like be right where you are. Even the Lord says, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wherever you are, you be there, continue to be there, and you just dovetail everything in the service of the Lord. And but here it seems to be like fantastic. Prabhupada says actually you have to burn up the material body, otherwise there's no chance of going back to Krishna, the subtle body. So I just wanted to understand between these two. Sometimes many of the places he says, just be where you are and dovetail everything in the service of the Lord. Like, change your position. But here he says, unless you burn up, there's no chance of.
Yeah, so those two statements are not different, Prabhu. So when we are engaging, wherever we are, the point is not you just stay where you are and do nothing. The point is you stay where you are, and the resources that Krishna has given us, you use those resources and practice bhakti. The point is we have to engage our body, mind, senses in the service of the Supreme Lord, wherever we are. Sthane sthitau. So when we engage in the process of bhakti, whether we understand or not, whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, as soon as we start engaging in bhakti, that's our subtle body, the desires, they start annihilating. What is the proof that the subtle body gets annihilated? What is the proof? Proof is, before we come to bhakti, we are so much attached. We have so many desires to fulfill our own senses and our family and friends and whatever. When we start practicing bhakti sincerely, doesn't matter how long, but as soon as we start practicing sincerely, we see that the propensity or the desire to enjoy reduces a little bit, at least.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
What does that mean? Isn't the subtle body being annihilated? That's why your desire now has reduced, because your desire is going in some other direction, right? So when this desire, so this was 0 and this was so much. Now when we start practicing bhakti, what happens? This desire goes going up and this comes down, because the time is the same, the desire is the same. So this comes down like this, like this, like this. So when it goes down, that means what? This is dying and this is manifesting. This is dying, this is manifesting. So the more this manifests, this will die. And that is the beauty and magic of this process of bhakti. It is not just some sentimental thing that people who are out of bhakti, they seem or they perceive. It is a magical thing that Krishna has given us, which we can practice anywhere, wherever we are, in whatever condition, but the effect is the same. Hope that clarifies, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? No? Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you very much for the very nice class, so informative, and we have learned a lot from you. And so often, please give us the opportunity to hear from you, so that in future also we do not become deprived of your valuable knowledge which you have learned, which has, for me personally, I have come to this line through you only. So with this with your more frequent class, we can be benefited, and probably I'm sure others will also be benefited. Thank you once again for your nice class.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Very good.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha
Anantapuri Vaishnav Bindu ki jai. Is
Prabhupada ki
Suhrit Krishna
jai.
Prabhu ki
Srila
jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Simran Devotee, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.